Now, you're now on the web with another organization, the Post Media. Um, Help me understand whether the rules of the game are similar. Should people be trying to get on a newspaper's website with a piece of video, a piece of audio, or some of their own writing? Or has the game changed for the web?
I think people should be trying to get on anywhere they can if they've got something to say. And you know, if there's a big protest going on and you've got a good angle on it, you should definitely be trying to get on and get your voice out and heard if that's what you want to do. At the end of the day, all these places are just trying to get good content that people will click on.
Funny, as well-known a person as Dick Cavett has been over his career, he's not on the main pages of the New York Times. He's on their website, and he's doing just fine there if you happen to like Dick Cavett. A big star, Alec Baldwin, has a radio program that was heard almost nowhere, and now it's getting more places to exhibit itself, and interesting interviews with, among others, Dick Cavett and Lorne Michaels and what have you. So those non-mainstream things, some very big names are gravitating to them.
You have to realize the audience is way bigger on the internet than it is in a newspaper, because the newspaper, they can only distribute it in a certain area. We can distribute the internet stuff everywhere. And if it's interesting and if it's good, people will pick it up, and especially with social sharing these days, if I recommend it to you and you trust me, you're going to open it and then read it, and then you might email it or tweet it out or Facebook it, and all of a sudden it grows exponentially. You can get your story far wider than you ever could in newspaper. That said, you also might get 7 people to read it.
Now, you're not even mid-career, but it's time in this little interview to go down memory lane. Does a horrible column or editorial that you've written come to your mind that you just wish you could snatch back out of the ether and never let anyone see?
You know what, there isn't one that comes to mind. There's some things where my opinion has changed, but I don't recall a huge faceplant anywhere where I thought, you know what, that just didn't work. There's some editing calls I made on columns that I wish I could take back.
How about the opposite? Boy, are you ever glad you wrote that column, took that position, covered that issue, exposed that issue, and you're really proud of that.
I'm really proud of some of the reporting that showed up in my columns, like I would say scooping everyone in Toronto that the city's buying a garbage dump in London and starting that conversation. But also just things that I was really passionate about the way the city's built, about, yes, in my opinion, the city needs to go after an Olympics or a Pan Am Games, because that's the only way anything in the city is going to be built. And I don't think there's enough sports facilities in this city. For my family, I've got 2 boys who are nuts about sports, and I spend a lot of time in Calgary. The facilities in Calgary are so much better than they are in Toronto. So I took a stand and said, this is why we need it. And as they start to build these facilities out, I'm proud that I took that stand, but I'm also frustrated because one of the points I brought up is I don't think we're getting enough out of this. And I still don't think we're getting enough out of it.
I guess the other question, as one reflects on a career, I heard an old timer tell me one time, you never regret the time you went really tough on somebody. The thing you regret more so is that you didn't go as tough as you should have on somebody. In other words, that cliched definition of journalism, it's designed to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. Is that just a good thing to say in a bar after a long day's work, or does it ring true for you?
I think it rings true. The real hard part, especially if you're on a beat, is if you go really hard after someone, the next day you're sitting next to them. You're interviewing them again. And that's where you really have to have a thick skin. And that's a tough thing for a journalist. And there's not a lot who can do that. And the ones who do, I really respect a lot.
I was worried about getting cut off as a journalist or ostracized. And I had a news director simply say, look, they need us more than we need them. They'll be back in a couple of days. They can't live without it. We can live without them. We can interview someone else. But I guess a lot of journalists are concerned about being cut off.
Well, and there's a government in Canada right now who has been cutting journalists off, and one of my buddies got cut off so bad, basically was told that by a number of public servants that if they talked to him, they would be fired. So all of a sudden, he couldn't get anybody to call him back. That's a big problem, and he had to leave his job because he couldn't do it anymore.
Well, one of the great old-time journalists was Claire Hoy, who I think I'm paraphrasing correctly. He said, "That's fine. I'll go stand outside their home if they won't talk to me. And if they won't talk to me because they say a senior official says they can't talk to them, I'll go stand outside that senior official's door." There's not really enough of that good fun in journalism anymore, is there?
There isn't, because there's such a pressure to deliver 2 or 3 stories a day. And if it's that hard to deliver a story, you can't get anybody to call you back, you have no sources, you have no on the records, you have no quotes, it becomes a really difficult job.
All right, you've had a storied career already because you got into it in your teens. You've asked a lot of questions of people. I'm going to give you the last word. You can second guess me. What did I forget to ask you? What was the good question I missed that I'm going to smack my forehead at the end of this interview?
I think it's, where do people go next? That things are changing so quickly, and newspapers are going to stop being relevant in 10 years, maybe 15. That TV news really going to be an impact player in 10 years? So where do we go next? How do we do what we do now for the changing world? And to me, one of the really interesting things that is happening is that corporations are starting to compete with the media for attention, that they feel their websites are as important as the New York Times or the New York Post or the Toronto Sun or the Toronto Star, and so they are becoming content producers themselves. So how do you deal with that? I think that's going to be a really interesting challenge for people going forward. In my business right now, okay, so we're trying to do stuff and get noticed, but over there is McDonald's, who's hosting a concert with Alicia Keys on their website. Okay, that's pretty neat.
30 years ago, she would have gone on Ed Sullivan or Johnny Carson or something.
That's right, or had a one-on-one interview with the music reviewer at the New York Times, and now she's just doing a concert on YouTube. Wow. That's a different world.
Well, Rob, fascinating. Thank you. You have proven yourself to be a master of the art of journalism, and I should probably change the title of the program to the Master of the Arts, because we got into so many other of the tangential arts in journalism. But thanks very much. Good chat.
Thanks for having me.